Yeah. Boing, boom, chuck. Are we starting?
I guess so. Are you here?
Hi,
good?
everybody. DJ Mehdi by my side. My name is A-Trak.
I'm not a DJ, but you know.
You know
me.
Torsten.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So yeah, okay, this is the more official bit. Please give a warm welcome all the way from Paris, France, and all the way from Montreal via New York. A-Trak. DJ Mehdi. This is a bit like Gulliver's setup in reverse, is it? I mean, like when you started out and won those championships, it was you on some pedestals trying to reach for the turntables, and now you have to lean down like that?
It's cruel irony.
But it was you who set it up. It was none of us.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
It's more intimate. The candles on my rider didn't make it.
oh, damn. We must have overread a bit with the candles, yeah. So what else do you got on your rider then?
What's on the rider? Hummus?
Nuts.
Cashews, preferably. Yeah.
Squeeze those nuts, yeah.
Sometimes promoters get cheap and they give you the nut variety pack, but
Oh.
all you want is the cashews. So
Yeah, cashews or macadamia, anything less is not.
yeah.
Is that what you learned when you were on tour with Kanye then?
He has cashews. Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah. Anything less is just not a legume.
Hmm.
This whole lecture is gonna be about
Nuts.
about nuts.
So what else can you tell us about Kanye's nuts then?
How you doing, Mehdi?
I'm doing fine. I don't know that much about Kanye's nuts. I'm sorry.
Shout out to Nick Cash Dubs.
Peace, Nick.
So, yeah, this is an improvised lecture, as you can tell already, but I swear we're gonna get into a rhythm of things.
How do you get from improvising into a rhythm anyway? Because, I mean, you guys usually plan things out in what you call a routine.
I mean, yes and no, but lately, the last few years, with like the schedule being way more booked up, I always think I'm gonna plan stuff, and I just end up improvising a lot more. So, Mehdi and I are doing this tour together right now. Well, we're doing a set together during the Fool's Gold tour, and then next week we're going to Europe, just me and him. And we had this whole thing mapped out that we're gonna rehearse for like 3 solid days and come up with a whole prepared set, and we've been improvising everything.
So, what's Fool's Gold outside of 9 minutes 53 of Brilliant Stone Roses madness?
Is that really how long? Did you do your research before this interview?
Now, funnily enough, I think it says 9:53, but if I'm not totally mistaken, the song is 10:47 or something.
Torsten, you're crazy.
I never really understood that. I thought there was some weird numerological conspiracy behind it, but I thought you might clean it up.
Well, this is 9:56, but if it was recorded off a 12-inch, maybe they played it extra 3 seconds after, so...
So the hiss might be it. So in the end.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Torsten, you scare me.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I thought we got over that once you know.
That one time I went to see you in Germany. Hey.
Now you're scaring me.
Fool's Gold is a label that my friend Nick and I started at the beginning of the year. And I was running another label before that called Audio Research, which was 10 years old when we stopped it this year. So that was much more, Audio Research was much more of an indie hip-hop label from like the Fat Beats, Rockers era, which we kept going. But in the last few years, I got into more, and I got more into like merging electronic music with the rap stuff that I was producing. And basically, there was like a new wave of artists and songs that I wanted to kind of champion and put out, either stuff that I was producing or people that were like in the same scene as me that I just felt like Nick and I could really bring together and package with some good artwork and kind of get behind, and that's how the label started. And
Are you trying to say you got bored with Backpack?
didn't we all? In a sense. I mean, yeah, and it was basically a crossroads, a situation where it's like, okay, do we try to keep audio research going and give it like a new image? Do we just start fresh with a new brand? And it was, I think we all really agreed that a new brand was, made sense. So, yeah, and we're on this tour right now, the Road Rampage, running through a select run of cities, and it's going really good.
But I mean, for Road Rampage, you both look pretty composed.
Yeah, I got a big scar all across here from last night when Mehdi hit me with a vodka bottle.
We chose not to speak about this.
Yeah. Forget what you just heard. There's no scar.
Okay, so what people probably don't really know is that you, before you met Petra Winter, were already quite an illuminate figure in the Parisian scene as well, right?
Yeah, I have kind of the same way, in I won't say career because we're pretty young, me and Al, despite our looks.
Our boyish good looks.
But yeah,
It's all about good products when being on tour, right?
Yeah.
nuts,
Nuts and
cashews.
cream, good cream, yeah.
Yeah, try the energy mix.
Keels.
And yeah, being like a hip hop producer for quite a long time, and the idea of merging electronic music and hip hop was already like there. And we in Paris, with who you referred to as Pedro Winter, who's also known as BZP, the label manager for Headbanger Records, something we were doing since '97, '98, on a very underground scale, small clubs in Paris, very small club, like 400 people clubs. But a lot of things made the opportunity for us to be on a larger scale also, a wider range of artists. A lot of artists were kind of doing the same thing in small parts of the world, but you could add them up. And also I think, and maybe you won't agree with me, but I think the Neptunes, Timbaland, some of those guys were already, maybe even without knowing it, like not doing it, but they were merging electronic music and hip hop in their ways,
Sure.
and that also paved the way, basically.
Thank God for sampling laws then.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, Mehdi definitely. I think when Mehdi and I only met like less than a year ago, but I knew about him for years. And actually, he met my brother and I worked very closely, and he met my brother when we were all working with Fat Beats, and he was also doing stuff with Fat Beats. So people that know him for his current music might not know that he was like one of the most proficient or like prolific hip hop producers in France in the 90s. So definitely when we met this year, I think we saw eye to eye, having done that same trajectory of going from a kind of a true school hip hop background in the 90s to getting into just like DJing and party rocking and electro mixed with rap, in today's musical climate.
So how many times do you have to read on whatever backpack sniper forum that you sought out?
I don't really get much flack from the hip hop guys. The only times I get a hard time from either from fans or from anyone is when like that happened just 2 nights ago. Someone at the show was just like, "Turntablism" in the middle of like a straight electro set, and it's just like, I've been scratching over these songs, and I'm like, the way I'm mixing this stuff, we're trying to get creative with it. It doesn't have to literally be like a DMC style routine to be interesting DJing. But I mean, on the hip hop side, it's like there's not that many people, I think, today that are really, really holding on to.
They're not.
No, or holding on to like this sacred vision of what hip hop is supposed to sound like as much as it was a few years ago. And I agree with Mehdi named Timbaland and the Neptunes. I think for a lot of us, around 2001 or like around after once the Neptunes got past like using the exact same sounds in every track and like made a few really really interesting songs and did the Nerd album and all that, that to me really made the whole distinction between underground and mainstream in rap irrelevant. Like to me, anyone that still talks about mainstream and underground, except for really extreme examples, like except for really extreme cases, is kind of stuck in an old dichotomy of rap and of music, because there definitely was a point to me around those, around the early 2000s, where major label rap records came back to being the best rap records. Like when the Blueprint came out, there was nothing indie that was, comparable. And the indie stuff became
Which, interestingly enough, was the first time that Jay-Z did a true album as such, as in, like, with one consistent theme.
As opposed to like a singles-based record.
Collection, yeah.
Absolutely. And as that was going on, the indie world that we all, bubbled in the mid to late 90s and that we all loved and cherished became like a caricature of itself, So...
I mean, obviously the commercial reality somehow have fused the two worlds together anyway, because I mean, overall the numbers have gone down, and so the difference between a 500 and a 20,000 sales is not that gigantic anymore.
Yeah, it's just not the same reality. Like, and it works both ways. And like, certain indie artists are way more sustainable than the artists that are signed to majors. So it's, it used to be like either you stay indie and you sell small numbers, but you make music that you feel strongly about, or you go on the major and you make shit that's, only for 14-year-old girls. And it, for a second, it really was that simple. But now it's all the styles are merging anyways. So, like Rihanna's making like dance records, and records that sound like what Madonna was doing a few years ago. And she's an urban artist.
So one nation under one all-over print hoodie then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And at the same time, like, Kylie is like reaching out to guys like Benny Blanco, who's like too young to get into a club and produces like spank rock records for Beats. So it, across the board, everything is like merging like that.
So, I mean, you can pretty much consider yourself as a veteran in this game then already.
I'm an old fart.
Yeah, old fart at
25.
Oh, I mean, it's a quarter of a century.
Yeah.
Like football players.
No, but industry years. I've been doing this for like 12 years. So.
And just for a point of reference, how old are you?
I'm 30 years old.
Did you, ask for your state pension yet?
Ask my what? I'm sorry?
Did you ask for your state pension yet?
Your retirement.
Yeah. Well, I released my first record in 1992, so it's been 18 years. So I technically spent more time in the industry than out of it, which is
a bit of a weird feeling when you realize that you've been going to clubs and all that for longer than you've not been, right?
But you know what? My wife, for example, who doesn't really understand this whole thing, always asks, like, I mean, it's been 3 weeks that I'm in the States and I've been playing like every night, sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times when there's an after party or something. And she's like, how do you still get excited? I mean, like, except the fact that it's Chicago and last night was Vancouver, it's pretty much going to be the same party. You're pretty much going to be spinning the same records. And I cannot really explain, but I do get excited. And I do want to do it. And, and I'm always happy and I'm not bored. So I feel good.
I hope you're not using her as a reference point, because, I mean, you want to be excited with her for the next 40 years as well, right?
Well, I'll tell her.
I wish I plugged in my like effects thing to put an air horn every time Torsten does like the dry humor. Like.
Exactly. So, but
I wish I actually have at home. Those old school like bicycle horns that beep, 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 beep. I should have brought that too.
One with the
Mr. Magoo horn, like
the one you put on a bike with the little pump kind of thing. Yeah, they're good. Yeah.
Yeah, I bought that at a shop in Japan at 5 in the morning.
You can take them off
Like
as
a
well, and
kid.
you can use it as a fork horn, and then like one of those hunting things, and you go like.
In the Alps, usually that's what you do.
Yeah, I guess so. The yeah, but I mean,
Tonight,
with
twisting in the
siren
Alps.
sound, I mean, it's one of those things. Like, who said it the other day that there's a siren plugin for Serato now?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but I mean, you must have about 800 million sirens in your collection somewhere, right?
I have a lot of sirens.
He's the siren master.
Yeah, I have a siren playlist. I don't. That just sounded funny.
Yeah, but with the with this whole thing of the styles merging and yada yada yada, discuss the aha routine.
The what?
The aha routine.
Oh, what, with Kanye?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he doesn't do that anymore. But yeah, when we were doing the Touch the Sky tour, when late registration came out, there was a part of the show when Kanye wanted to like play just other people's hits to just get the crowd riled up. When we started doing it and we had like the full set for the tour, it was like, they actually had like a clock radio and it was like, hey, let me see what's on the radio. And then you play like a Prince song and the crowd is like, oh my God, I love Prince. Michael Jackson, he's so good. You like him? I like him too. And then he always caught people off guard. The last song was Aha, Take On Me. And he would like do the Carlton dance, and a lot of people just thought that was just like, so the crowds would cheer and certain people would just look at it like, why is he playing Take On Me? And I think everybody likes that song, but I think, you don't like it? Yeah, I can't, you know, ask Mr. West. He does his
Well, like
election.
when I went to first year in grammar school, like, that's just I had a moment there.
Well, I think in certain respects, like what Kanye does with music, and it translates with his shows even more, is kind of like, there's kind of like an educational, like a musical education side of it, where he kind of embraces the idea that his music is for everyone, and when he goes and get artwork by Murakami or like a video with Gondry that doesn't even come out, or like, I don't know, to get this or that person to play on his records, part of it is, I think, like his side of like wanting to strive for like what's best, and part of it is also embracing the idea of being like a pop artist and in both like an artist that makes popular art for everyone to appreciate, and like kind of bringing that to the masses.
I mean, he's an easy one to hate on if you want to, but nevertheless, I mean, when you go to a concert and like that tour, which started with the Touch Sky video and all those installations with all the whorehouses of the world and poor little Kanye lost in sin and temptation, you just got in there and it's like, okay, whatever is usually happening here for the next 2 hours, this is Las Vegas, and you're gonna be entertained, and
Yeah,
I'm your Frank Sinatra tonight,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
well, that's a notion someone.
I mean, but at the end of the day, like, I really feel right now in music, what excites me is that, like, as the industry is like more and more in shambles, the quality of music is more and more of a driving force, and that's dope. And sure, there's still like some extremely formulaic songs on the radio and what have you, but it's just, for the simple fact that, like, even, I don't know, if you're like an indie artist and you put something up on iTunes and you can have placement that's right next to like a major artist and stuff, like the side of the industry that's becoming kind of more democratic because the big companies don't know what to do anymore, that makes a climate where good music can prevail a lot of times, and I think that's what's fun with music right now. And Mehdi was talking about, like, how do you not get bored by playing similar sets every night in clubs that look the same and crowds that crowd surf the same, and in pictures that go up on the site that looks like Cobra Snakes like everything being very similar every night. But I know that for me, there's something about music right now that's giving me a spark that I haven't had in a while. And part of that kind of comes from the fact that honestly, I feel like music is stagnant and exciting at the same time, because it kind of got so stagnant in the past year. You know what I mean? Like there's so many DJs that started playing exactly the same selections, and as much as I love using Serato, like Serato made it so easy for everyone to have a set that has a little bit of electro, a little bit of Baltimore club, a little bit of, you know, like it's just like all these. So everybody has like the obvious selection of each genre and mixes it all together in no type of order, and you know gets it from the same blogs, and you had so much of a situation where like the mass of DJs were playing the same stuff that for me suddenly now, and this tour is kind of like the ultimate example of that. And you know, working with Mehdi is exciting too. It's like, and for me, it pushes me to figure out a way to stand out from that mass again. You know what I mean? Like it's not, from a DJ's perspective, it's not simply a question of like, hey, I'm gonna play this genre of music because I'm discovering it. Like at this point, everybody has discovered it. So it's like, how can I play it in a way that's distinctly me? And that's a really dope challenge. You know what I mean? And to find a balance between that challenge and just putting on a good party at the same time, that's what I'm really enjoying right now. Because you can get kind of lost in that too. You can get like super crazy and technical, and it could be distinctly you, but the crowd will be like, "What?" You know. So to be a good entertainer and to like develop your identity in a climate where everyone has access to everything, that's kind of one of the most exciting things about music right now for me.
I mean, culturally speaking, it's a pretty interesting paradigm shift, because on the one hand you have this whole minority, this mainstream of all these minority sub-genres become the new mainstream, and everyone is just like putting the distinctive tracks of each genre. And then in the same way as in the discotheques we hated when we first started going out, it's like the similar system of the lowest common denominator kind of things, because it's always looking for the big bang effects and yeah, pretty much for novelty kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Again, like.
Yeah. I don't know. It's fun. It's like, and just seeing rap and electronic like merge together. It's like when you're a DJ and you come up and you learn about what DJing was like before you, and you read about like the music scene in the early '80s and like just where like the art scene and like the whole kind of soul sonic force style of rap that's electro at the same time, like that whole world where it's like the artwork was crazy, and then like like this artist used to hang out with that artist, and then they made that crazy, you know, punk record, but then their next record was rap, and you know, shit like that. Like it's starting to feel like that again. So that's what's kind of encouraging, I think.
So within all these types of music, I mean, what do you actually like? Or in other words, do you like stuff?
So, you like stuff? Man, I think I try to pick and choose in almost every genre. But I mean, what I listen to the most is still, you know, rap and electro, and then a certain selection of classics that I love. Like everybody has like their personal like couple of albums of like 70s shit that they just really like and 80s shit that they just really like, and that's like pretty much what you'll find me listening to in my downtime.
But where's the difference between some old deadhead following Jerry Garcia for 5,000 miles and us praying every morning to the Holy Street Sounds compilation?
Huh? What?
Like, I mean, when you had like, you know, those rock dudes that really got on our nerves when we were growing up,
Yeah.
who were just like, oh, the Dead, Led Zeppelin, yada
I
yada
still
yada.
love Zeppelin, yeah.
But yeah, on the same hand, you get the feeling that I don't know, certain Hashim Al Nafish records or some Street Sound compilation or whatever have like similar status, and we're just getting to you know, we're just exchanging Jimmy Plant for someone else, but it's exactly the same boring mechanism.
Yeah, but then you mix like that's getting mixed with like updated sounds, and I think it's you know, that lineage that's interesting. You know, like to be able to listen to a Nucleus record and like a Sebastian record and feel like, hey, that came from this, but this is also interesting because it adds a certain grittiness and.
Probably the last album you did was one of the ones where even the most notorious naysayers and naggers were like, oh, you can actually do something with those influences and still make it sound now. Like
That's the challenge. That's the challenge for me, which is quite interesting because I'm not a singer and I'm not a rapper. So I have to find a way to make interesting music instrumental and hip hop at the same time. Like when after DJ Shadow and stuff and Crush and all those records, hip hop instrumental records weren't dance music records. So that's an idea I was looking into, but I've just started. You know, it wasn't my first album. It was my first album with this in mind, and it was also the first album for our label Headbanger Records. So a lot of things where we were just trying to do stuff, and we were still excited about doing anything, but weren't ready to like have an established thing. You know, it was more playing and finding new ideas, and that's why I still feel like we've just started. You know, that's why I'm touring a lot. That's why I'm explaining a lot. You know, I'd never say no to an interview or whatever, just to explain that this is something I haven't started it, but I'm starting it for myself, and I'm still studying how to make instrumental hip hop music danceable, enjoyable, like an album you could actually listen without having to have chorus verses, or radio single. And I think it also goes, and something we haven't mentioned still, with the fact that you don't have to pay for music anymore. And the fact that also when you do an album and you do like those 13 or 14 tracks, you spend a lot of time putting them in the right order, like thinking that anybody gonna actually listen to it in that order when everybody's on shuffle on his iPod, or people would just like browse into iTunes and pick the 3 tracks that they know, or you know, people just download. And some of you've been like thinking about this interlude between 2 songs that would be just the right link between song 7 and song 9. And you know, when you get when you go to LimeWire or SoulSeek, you don't get the interlude, so it fucks up your whole plan. So it's just, you know, who knows, like how do you listen to an album, which track, whatever, like singles, stuff like that. We're still experimenting, all this stuff. And you know, in that regard, I had a lot of fun doing this record. I also needed a single or whatever, and etc. But it's the first time in this industry that I actually did anything that like I wanted to, because I had no rules, and because having no commercial pressure, having no major label pressure, and Headbanger Records being like still burgeoning and still very, very young at the time. I mastered my album almost 2 years ago. We were just having fun basically, and that's what I loved. And I'll speak only for Headbanger Records, but inside our own label, which is you know, growing up and all of it, I'm still like fighting for this spirit to prevail, and not videos, singles, and big hits and stuff. But and Pedro, PZP, and So Media, the guy who does all the artwork, we're very much on the same page for this. You know, it's something that we really want to keep alive, like doing 12 inches, although nobody really buys 12 inches anymore. And just doing fun things just because it's fun and because it's stylish and because we like to. And without an economic plan that is very tight. We lose a lot of money.
But it's for the sake of building a brand at the same time. And I think, you know, Mehdi was talking about the challenge and the difficulties of making instrumental songs when you come from a hip hop background. And that's, you know, when we first met, I remember, you know, having a long conversation with him about that, because, you know, I faced the exact same challenges when I started producing more in the last few years. And, you know, when you come from a hip hop background, when you make a track, all you really make is a loop, and then someone helps you turn it into a song, and then you might make a few change ups once they put their vocals on it to, to spruce it up a bit. But, most of us who are making the kind of music that we make don't really have, musical training, obviously, and we have to teach ourselves, about song structure. But when you're at a point in music like it is today, where all these genres are merging and what have you, there's not even any rules for that. So, it's fun because you can make your own rules. At the same time, it's challenging because there's not even that many obvious examples to turn to sometimes to figure out how to make this demo into a song, and then for the next song to be a different approach, and not to fall into formulas. And but when it works, I mean, that's what can make some of these records really, really unique. But I mean, so I could really relate to what he was just saying, like, listening to guys like Shadow a few years ago, but at the same time watching that style of instrumental, sample-based hip-hop turn into like practically hotel music when it just got, watered down and replicated so many times.
Yeah, but Shadow was the exception.
Yeah, Shadow's the only one.
Well, not the only one, but he was
the best one. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he. Yeah, of course. No, I'm not saying his music was hotel music, but every time that someone else tried to make, you know what I mean? Huh?
Would anyone ever say?
No. Shadow's great, but when I started working on an album for myself about 2 years ago, maybe almost 3, I don't even know. For me, it was interesting because like I had all these different ideas and concepts that I wanted to infuse into my music. And I wanted to, like, on one hand, I wanted to make scratch music that was enjoyable as music. Like I come from a background of turntablism, as you probably know, and there has been some what I would call scratch music, meaning like music, tracks that are mainly done, like executed by manipulating records, as opposed to like putting a sound in a drum machine or whatever. But a lot of times over the years, the records that were made like that stayed extremely left field and extremely, I think people kind of grant a certain amount of, I don't know how to say this, but like people will almost let the producer get away with a song being just, not that catchy because it's interesting technically. You know what I mean? But I wanted to make songs that were good songs, but that have that technical element to it because I just happen to like the textures that would bring to production. Like if I scratch the hi-hat and there's like a low frequency that comes from my hand being on the record and the needle picks up on that, and there's a little bit of static on the high end, that makes a really rich sound. And when every layer of your track is like that, I really like the richness of that. So that's, on one hand, I wanted to have that element in my production. On the other hand, if you look at it like 2-3 years ago, like I wanted to work with a few rappers that I liked without sticking to whatever those old paradigms we were talking about in terms of like who you would expect me to work with. That's why the first song I put out was with Dipset, just to make a statement, to be like, you might think I'm A-Trak, the scratch DJ who has a label with Fat Beats, and because of that, you might expect me to only work with like, someone trying to sound like Tribe many, many years later, but I happen to love Dipset, and here's a song with Dipset. So there was that element to it, and then I also wanted to have an element that's very close to what Mehdi was describing in terms of like making danceable, up-tempo instrumentals. And what I ended up with was like a bunch of songs that didn't really gel together, and that's why I kind of put the whole project aside. And the party side of it, of the production that I was starting to work on a few years ago, is what I really stuck to. And now when I make a track, I don't need to have a scratch in it because just because I don't need to have it anymore. I don't really have that side of me that's just like there has to be a scratch, because that's not how I'm trying to present myself um, and and the hip hop stuff that I did that was really pure hip hop, like the song I did with Lil Brother, for example. That to me is kind of like a previous chapter. Sorry, but the party stuff is what's really interesting to me right now, because there's a ton of ways to get really creative with it. Can I get some water? Zane is our tour manager.
So, Mehdi, when you said no one is really listening to albums in that order anymore, don't you think that you were rather on the receiving end of this as well, since you put in that effort and created some sort of a classical album approach with interludes and so forth, and actually like, okay, I don't care whether you only download 3 of them, I'm gonna do this the way I want it to be. And
Well, that's an approach I have about life and art every day. I mean, if you like the way you present yourself to 10 people or to 10 million people should be the same. Like if you're devoted to what you do and your art, and if you believe, you just be, you know, that's why I love to do in stores and stuff like that. And I also love to play big stage festivals in front of 10 or 15,000 people and just show the same energy, because it keeps me, you know, rooted where like my love for music is, and not necessarily my ambition, if you will. But I'd like to just to add one point to what we were saying just before, like the difficulty for us producers to have our own music. And 2 points I wanted to, like we talked about the hip hop producers that were using electronic music and stuff. There was also an influence from the electronic music field, where producers, as the Chemical Brothers, as Fatboy Slim, as Daft Punk, were becoming artists of their own, and you know, interpreting, like performing their own song,
And made pop records.
and make pop records without even having to have, you know, featurings.
Yeah.
First and second, I thought at one point that our best producers in the hip hop field, namely Kanye, for example, or Pharrell, or Timbaland, and all those guys, even if you made Dr. Dre, they had to become rappers to become pop stars, if you know what I mean. And I've never had this in me. I never was in a position where I was like, oh, okay, maybe I should sing, or maybe I should like start to write rhymes so I can have my own records. So I had to find another path. But I thought that the electronic music guys, and especially Daft Punk, because I'm from Paris and they're my friends, and they were they were everywhere in Paris when they blew up. And it was very hard, even if you were deeply rooted in the backpack underground hip hop French scene, which can be the most closed circuit that you can ever watch. But they were everywhere. They were just so influential that, you know, being producer, you know, they were using the same records, they were using the same tools, they were using the same samplers, but they were artists of their own. They had some power in their approach that we didn't have. And for me, you know, I wasn't being like, I wasn't going to become a rapper or a singer or whatever, like Pharrell or whatever. But I was just like, hey, there's something here. And Fatboy Slim also, and the Chemical Brothers, I think.
I always thought that Daft Punk had a hip hop approach to their production, anyways. Like especially as I discovered some of the samples that they used, you know, like some electronic music is kind of studio wizardry, but Daft Punk's production a lot of times is very loop driven, and yeah, when you would just hear that, like when you hear the sample from Harder Better,
which is
what's his name? Was it Harder Better?
Release the Beast.
Yeah, what's a bird song? Yeah, that's it. Edwin Bird song. And you're like, wow, it's all here except the vocoder. I just think that there's when you come up in hip hop and you learn about production in the hip hop aesthetic, which is extremely minimal and stripped down. You look at dance music as kind of a mystery, and I still do. Like even if everything I produced this year is like in the 120 to 130 BPM range and like is meant to be played, you know, next to an electro song in a club set, I'll still listen to electro and dance records, and there'll always be one thing in the track that I hear where I'm like, I don't know how to do this. Like that. So, but Daft Punk was one of those groups where you could relate to it as a hip hop head, because you'd be like, oh yeah, they're just looping stuff and like doing it just so well that it becomes a pop song. But the approach of it is very sample based.
But speaking of Daft Punk, and obviously with you representing Ed Banger to some certain degree, you got a common link in the person running it, but ideologically, that's a complicated word. I mean, the justice approach on stage, for example, is slightly different than the classic Daft Punk approach, is it?
Yeah, I wouldn't speak for Justice, as I wouldn't speak for Daft Punk either. I know that Daft Punk pretty much, and Pedro BZP said this in many interviews, so I can say it. In a way, Daft Punk started at Banger. Not only the label or because Pedro did it or whatever, but just the spirit and the power for French artists to come, for example, here, in America or in Canada or even in England. England and France are like 20 kilometers one from the other. But for us French artists to go and play in London, it's not that often. And definitely Daft Punk in many ways were the blueprint of what Pedro tried to do with Ed Banger after this. But we are another generation. I'm almost the same age as Thomas, but the Justice guys, for example, they're a bit younger, and they grew up without any boundaries. Like there were no borders anymore. For example, I know for sure that Xavier from Justice used to listen to Busta Rhymes record or to French hip hop records like NTM or Lunatic, and Daft Punk, and not without having to level it, not without having to say, this is what I like. I'm into house music, and I don't. When my generation, for example, if you were into Nirvana, for example, you were into Tupac or Notorious B.I.G. So that was our approach. But growing up, I had another approach, me personally, and the Justice were a bit younger, so I guess they also have their own approach. But as far as the how do you call it, the link
or the presentation,
the link between Daft Punk and us.
Yeah, I mean, on the one side you have the people that want to totally stand back and don't put their own human personality in it and like their private life. On the others go
that's what you
representing themselves as iconic rock stars almost, and like
that's what you meant. Once again, I couldn't speak for Xavier and Gaspard from Justice. But, as far as I'm concerned, I was a producer first, like you said at the beginning, and I've been used to be in the shadow for like 10 years.
Now you stand on speakers.
Now I'm standing on speakers, but I've never envisioned my act as a group, as a band, as an iconic thing, if you will. Whether like younger guys like Kavinsky, for example, or Sebastian in lesser... but Justice is the best example. They actually think about their image and their band and as much as they think about their music. Definitely. So, I couldn't speak for them. Me, I'm a little bit different, and I'm a DJ first.
But there's something that happened in dance music in the last few years, also in terms of audience. Like, me being very close to my brother who's in the group Chromeo, I really saw...
And he's your older brother as well, right?
Yeah, older brother. I really saw a whole progression in what they had to do as a band to kind of connect to their audience. And when Chromeo did their first album, my brother was also already doing his PhD. He didn't want to tour. Like he liked to make music, so he made a record, and he was used to always being in the background. So he didn't grasp the concept yet that he had to tour in today's musical reality to support an album. And when Chromeo was doing their first record like 4 years ago, there was barely any references and influences in music at that point in time for what they were trying to do, because the only stuff I remember the only stuff that they were listening to that was kind of contemporary was Daft Punk and Mr. Oiseau and maybe like one or two other people, and then it was all like the 80s, like cameo style of like references to their music. So, but when their label would tell them, you have to tour to support this album, or we're freezing the budget, they'd be like, but Daft Punk doesn't tour. Like now they do. Like you guys gotta remember, like everybody's talking about Daft Punk's show right now, and they're like the most talked about performance, but they hadn't toured in 10 years, right? So when Discovery came out, when the Daft Punk's second album came out, you didn't see him anywhere. So for Chromeo, when they did that first record, it was a tough time in music because there was no bins in the stores to put their record in. Like, my grandmother would go to the record shop to try and support, little David's album, like her grandson's album, and she didn't know where to find it. And do you have Chromeo? And they would take her to the techno section, which is way in the corner, where Chromeo's like way more, Hall & Oatesy and funk and 80s funk than techno.
I don't really agree to this
No,
point,
but
I have to say.
few years ago.
And I didn't agree with Dave.
Yeah, but he's hard-headed.
On his first album.
Yeah, but that's kind of what they were faced with. Like, they didn't want to tour, and there's just like the industry didn't know where to put their record, and that in itself was like so much more of a challenge. Like, when you make an album, you don't think about that side of it. And then they started touring, and they started touring in these clubs, in the venues, with indie groups. And once again, today this might make sense to you, but 3-4 years ago, it was really odd. I remember they were like touring with the Unicorns in Canada, and to me and him, it was just like, we couldn't wrap our heads around it. Like, why are these kids coming out to see Chromeo and the Unicorns at the same time? But that was kind of like the beginning of this whole merging that we're in the middle of now, where today you have indie kids that know R. Kelly albums by heart and listen to, and that think that Lil Wayne is the best rapper alive, when like Lil Wayne's shit is super lyrical. Like, Lil Wayne's rapping, to me, like, I'm still wrapping my head around like why an indie kid will listen to Lil Wayne, But like, so that's very much a reality today, where you have people listening to like dance, indie, and like crunk at the same time.
So to continue with the real talk, the whole image
to go to Sex Planet,
and the link to Tupac right there. The image. I mean, you said you were really happy with staying in the shadows, and then, but I guess you were somehow happy with having an album with you drawn as a Godzilla, right?
Because I had another ambition, and also because the music I was making without even thinking about it, like the music I was naturally drawn to and making with my hands and my ears, like weren't that much appealing to the rappers I was working with anymore. And that pretty much happened to every producer I know. I don't know, but yeah, it's true. Like, at one point you how many beats can you make that go at 96 BPMs? Like for 10 years, like at one point you're like if you were learning how to play the guitar, you with a guitar with those 6 strings, you can play Django Reinhardt, you can also play Jimi Hendrix. You can like go from and there's no selling out or in finding some quality to some guitar player in one genre from Wes Montgomery to Jimmy Page. And I think it's natural, and I actually think it was natural for me. But say, for example, let's get out of the hip hop or electronic music field, but you take a picture of Bob Marley, for example, in '73, and one picture in 1980 before he died, and you get pretty much the same guy. He stayed true to what he was doing. The albums the records he was making, the songs he was singing were, more or less, there's only like 10 or 15 subjects he touched, and he kept on making songs about this, and we all loved it. And
Not a mercy.
The Sex Pistols, for example, they could make the same song over and over and over, and we would always like it because they were staying through. And in another art form, in graffiti, for example, or in skateboarding, or all the youth movements, I think there is this tendency of staying true to what you were drawn to at first, like, and being a bit punk about it. But there's also, if you, like, for example, take a picture of John Lennon in 1963, like the same time period, 63 to 70, and you know, John Lennon had like 15 phases, different phases. He was going through different stuff, and what he was experiencing in life was showing in his music. And it's another way of seeing how you could evolve with your art, with your music. And the same goes for graffiti, and the same goes for, like, for example, I was speaking about the Sex Pistols. Let's, like, the Clash, for some example, were doing another way of thinking with their own music, and it was still punk. They were doing a hip-hop record with Futura, and then they were making Rock the Casbah, and then, you know, and it was still interesting. And you couldn't say, like, Johnny Rotten was a better artist than Joe Strummer. It was just different, and they had their own. So whatever, at one point, I was like, how many James Brown or Parliament records can I sample again? And everybody's doing the same thing, and we're all going to, like, from 92 to 98 BPMs. And, you know, how many, 5, 6, 7 years you do this, and at one point you're like, hey, this guy from San Francisco, DJ Shadow, was doing something different. And these guys from across my street, named Daft Punk, were doing something very, very different with the same tools, etc., etc. So at one point I was like, yeah, let me try, you know, why not? And it's true that some of the people I was working with were interested in it, and we made great records. I mean, good records, if you may. And some of the people I were working were like, no, I want the old stuff. I want to keep on doing the same thing. And I'm not saying it was better or whatever. There's those two approaches. So they wanted to do the same thing. And at one point, I couldn't do it. I was like, I did this already. And now 5 years later, I'm not into doing the same thing, but just like what you were saying about Tribe Called Quest or whatever. So I got more of a bad rap, and the forums and the internet wasn't around at that point, but I got way more of a bad rap than you when I started to do some electronic music, when I started to being a DJ in raves and in techno and in electronic music clubs, and when I've started to doing some remixes for electronic music band. Way more than you.
Yeah, I got my bad. Yeah, people used to shit on me when I was 15, and the DJs were like, "He's just winning because he looks cute."
wait, you look cute. Huh?
I like this whole subplot that we have going on stage. No, and I want to add something to what Mehdi was talking about also in terms of, like, for, you know, a lot of us that came up as hip hop producers always had this curiosity to do other stuff, and I've seen this in so many producers where, you know, a lot of producers have, like, the little stash of beats that's just kind of on the side that when you first start making them for the first year or so, you don't even really play them to more people than a few of your friends, because you just figure, like, yeah, that's just me fucking around with, like, non-hip-hop stuff, and I don't really know where it's going, but I'm just kind of doing it because I'm, you know, because I'm bored with rap type of thing. And now it's really, I think now with all these genres converging, like we're talking about, a lot of us, and Nick and I have conversations about that all the time, where, like, you just start fantasizing about thinking about your favorite producers and thinking, like, yo, I want to hear, like, Manny Fresh's stash of, like, shit that he's not putting out because it doesn't sound like Cash Money or whatever. Like, it's something that we always wanted to approach with when we started the label Fool's Gold, was like, at one point we got to just step to these producers, older established producers, and see what's in their vault.
Do the Manny Fresh Van Dyke
I haven't
Parks
tried.
record.
Manny Fresh is hard to reach, and I haven't really tried yet. But I'm saying it's something that we all, like, when like in the deepest of the deep nerd talk, it's something that'll come up. Like, man, I know that there's producers in hip hop that have produced other stuff that we haven't even heard, you know, and but yeah, because I think all of us just get to that point where it's just like you said, how many 96 BPM beats can you make? And just, like, to come back to what I can relate to and me being close to my brother and stuff, like, I remember that's how Chromeo started, was like, you know, like, I know my brother was in a band when he was like 14 playing Zeppelin covers and stuff. So he always had, like, the like playing guitar, writing songs side to him, and then I think hip hop for me and him, you know, us growing up listening to classic rock and getting to hip hop when we were teenagers was fun because you learn these boundaries, and to stick with those boundaries that are really rigid in hip hop production is kind of an exercise in style. Like how dope can your beat be if it's like within this tempo range and it has like, and everything is sampled, and you know the drum sounds have a certain texture that's proper to hip hop and everything. You know, that's a great challenge. That's like, I remember when, you know, again, to go back to stuff I know, like scratching, when Qbert got to a point that was so advanced with his scratches that he would always scratch on the same sound, and it was just like, how ill can you get with your solos if you're only scratching on ah all the time and on fresh, like these two sounds? Let's like how musical can you get with it? So those boundaries become really stimulating for a while as an artist. But then I think after like at one point you kind of reach the end of that. But I remember when Dave started Chromeo, he was like, this is my non-hip hop project. And he wasn't even telling his boys in the hip hop scene that he was doing that, because but then
it was his non-hip hop project, okay? But he was surprised that his records were in the hip hop section.
no, he was surprised they were in techno section.
Yeah, but you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, but for all of us had to adapt to these like conceptions of genres and everything, you know? And that makes me think of something else that like sometimes I reflect on, is like, I was talking about how like when you produce hip hop, there's these really tight boundaries. And I think I was having a conversation with my friend Exchange, who produces Spank Rock and some of Melissa's records, Kid Sister. We were talking about like hip hop production and dance production, and I always felt like it's easier for a hip hop producer to make like an up tempo dance type of song than for a dance producer to make rap beats. I'll even go flat out and say that like.
But I mean, that's what Goldie said all the time anyway, and like how many good down-tempo tracks.
I hate down tempo. I'm not saying that towards Goldie, because I've heard of his temper, but I'm saying no, he screamed at my previous agent, like really, he made her cry. She's really sweet. No, I'll even say like, it's an exception. It's a crazy exception when a dance producer can make a good hip hop style beats. And I think,
Name one.
yeah, I can't. I don't know. You know, like it's, and I think it has to do with, like earlier I was talking about how like dance music has this whole like mysterious like studio wizardry side to it. Guys that make dance tracks get really involved with like the fine details of like all these different settings of compressions and, you know, filtering bass lines in and out and doing all these weird sounds that sound like, you know, it's shit that comes out of a cavern. And, you know, like when you try to bring that to hip hop, a lot of the dance guys don't know how to strip it down enough, and it just ends up sounding like extremely overproduced. Whereas if you're a hip hop guy, you know, like you know about old school electro, you know about like the old drum machines, and you know about drum programming. I feel like hip hop drum programming is harder, anyways. Like to program drums at a slower tempo is harder, because it's way harder. Just like beat matching is harder at a slower tempo. It's easy to mix fast records. When you get slower, you hear every detail and every subtlety of your programming is super important. So when you bring it up faster, you're just kind of it's kind of fun. You're just like, hey, let me make a danceable track, and like just and you're like, I could dance to this, and then you know, like, whereas like when someone, you know, like the dance dudes will slow it down and it'll still be all like with like these weird like reason sounds, and you're like, yo, slow, stop it. No, give me a loop and a good, you know, and a good drum program, and that's all you need for a good rap beat. I always like to think about that, because, you know, like the dudes that have the illest drum programming are hip hop dudes. Like if you look
DJ Premier,
Premier or Dilla,
who applied to the first category of artist I was referring to, he did the same formula for 15 years, and we still love it.
like but he made that blueprint, so he can do it for as long as he wants. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, there's when you think about how many people how many bedroom producers will just listen to the drum programming of someone like Premier or JD. I don't think there's similar examples for faster music. Maybe just because in that tempo there's more room for little mistakes that make the beat good and stuff like that.
Somehow, I give you that to a certain point, but I'm pretty sure that people like Theo or Carrie Chandler or so would probably slightly disagree. But
I mean, I'm oversimplifying a bit to make my point, but my main point is that dance producers
are you just basically saying you want to play faster music because it's more fun to play with at night, and you don't have to stay that sober, and you can get away with things a lot easier?
It's more about the way music is right now. I just feel that there's more dance music that I enjoy at this in 2007. And it's
isn't that kind of interesting how dance music has become so much more popular, but dancing as such not?
Yeah, that's true. And even when you think
that's
about it,
because it's been a while since you've seen him dance. You're gonna be surprised.
No, even when you I even think there's words that used to be really taboo that aren't anymore. I catch myself talking about dance music and about pop in this whole lecture in ways that aren't ironic and that aren't pejorative at all. But a few years ago, pop was taboo and dance music was taboo. Dance was something that we laughed at. It was like fucking I'm a Barbie girl and those kinds of songs. That's what I used to call dance, And if you asked me what category Daft Punk was, I didn't know what, I'd be like, well, it's just dope, But now you can say dance, now you can say pop, and it's not frowned upon.
This is your own case though, because I know for sure that coming from Detroit, for example, somebody like Dilla pretty much knew what dance music was.
Yeah, but I don't know if he would have used the word dance, is what I'm saying.
Techno, which was even worse in '96.
Eminem once said, "Nobody listens to techno." Talking about Moby, that's the best thing. It's just wow, if you think Moby makes techno, then you're just great. Why isn't he great anymore? Sidebar.
Yeah, should we have a little moment for Marshall?
Exactly.
Yeah, rest. But the interesting notion that is underlying in there all the time is this whole concept of progression, and progression always has been a main theme in dance music, no matter whether it's house, techno, drum, bass, hip hop, whatever. And
I still don't like drum and bass. I still don't like drum and bass.
But isn't drum and bass to a degree an example of a genre which took the whole progression aspect a little bit too serious and therefore confined itself in a lot of more ways than it was probably healthy? With it's all about the next level, the next level, the next level. And I mean, yes, between 1990 and let's say 95, you saw let's say this sort of a progression, and from there on you just progressing in a lot smaller steps.
If anything, I would give credit to hip hop producers in that aspect of production in terms of progressing, and I'm talking about rap producers, because it's the way we're talking about how rap started integrating electronic sounds. Sometimes I'll hear some obscure ass southern tracks with the illest synth sounds and the most some drum sounds that could be in an LCD beat, and I'll listen to this and remind myself that the guy that produced this is probably like 19, and I'll just be like, yo, does he even realize how ill he is? Like, there's a lot of stuff like that in rap at the same time that stays interesting, where like I feel like the way that synthesizers and big drum machine sounds snuck into the soundscape of rap is really dope to me, because there was no pretension to it. You know, it wasn't like, man, I'm gonna make this next level shit. You know, like you never hear, people in rap don't talk about how great their equipment is and stuff. Not that much, man. Like, I feel like the way that the synthesized sound snuck into rap hasn't been as pretentious as when you're talking about in certain subgenres of rap music, where people just, of dance music, I mean, where the producers were actively searching for that next level. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but the interesting thing when you say, like, when you're talking about 19-year-old kids, is when you got people, especially in, let's say, London, from the crime/dubstep sort of arena, that are definitely too young to have been raving in 1986, and all of a sudden these genres go through like very similar cycles, even in sound aesthetics and whatnot, and all of a sudden you find Scream doing a track which essentially could be a +8 record, 1991, and like Speedy J record, or like, it's pretty interesting how there seems to be, like, just because of the club dynamic, certain aesthetics seem to come forward and ebb and forth.
Yeah, and you quoted a London example, but it's pretty much an exception, I think. It's actually like kind of only happening in England. Yeah, I think so.
Unless you have some obscure German reference that we don't know.
Yeah, but speaking of obscure local references, I mean, you obviously, all the people, or a lot of people usually have this notion, you're only speaking of London, you're only speaking of New York or whatever. And, but I mean, neither of us here is from there. And I think in the room there's about a handful of people from London, half of them are press. And everyone else is from somewhere else, really. Yeah. And so can you probably talk a little bit about, like, creating these local infrastructures to make sufficient...
It's actually a good question, and the joke you were making about Germany, for example, Germany has the biggest hip hop scene outside of United States. German hip hop is bigger than French hip hop, no matter what. Me being coming from France, but I've never heard
that. But that was different when in the mid-90s.
But I've never heard a German hip hop record using a Kraftwerk or DJ Hell or Gigolo or a minimal techno sound and make it their own and saying, hey, I'm German, this is what's happening in Germany right now, and I'm hip hop and I'll make it German hip hop for some reason. Maybe you know an example that I don't know, but for some reason, like, English people have less difficulties merging those sounds, and that's probably why drum and bass had such a good ground, in England, and etc., etc. I mean, that didn't happen in Germany, and that certainly didn't happen in France. And when myself and a few others, we were trying to do this, we were very, very, very underground, and we still are in France. Really, Justice is really the first like successful record to come out of this scene, and there have been like many tries. Like a band called TTC, for example, in France, was doing this since their first album, which was like 1997 or something, and everybody was like throwing stones at them, and tomatoes and eggs, and we're like what are you doing? This is a hip hop concert. Why are you playing some techno? And it was natural to them because they vibe to DJ Funk and to Daft Punk and to Public Enemy, and they were like, this is the music we like, this is how we do it. But it's very, very, very marginal, very underground, and TTC and a lot of other French people that you may haven't heard of, but a lot of people have been trying to do this on a more wider scale and on a quite pop music level, and it wasn't like possible until very, very recently when Miss Dynamite, The Streets, Lily Allen probably, and I'm only thinking about recent examples, but whatever. What's it, Bristol, the Bristol scene, like Massive Attack and Portishead and all those guys, they were making interesting music and commercial music at the same time, and they were all merging genres without even having to explain themselves. And that, I don't know if it happened elsewhere. From my experience, I don't remember it happening in Germany or in France, or not even in the US.
I mean, obviously, there's the little language element as well that probably, for whatever reason, people don't really like to listen to German lyrics outside of.
I'm so sorry for that.
Outside of the Alsace or wherever. But no, but so there might be.
That's my point. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't. Once again, maybe I don't know.
Yeah,
Maybe
no, there might be.
there were other examples that I might, that I don't think about right now. But I think for some reason that just the British music scene, maybe the industry, maybe the fact that it has such a long musical history and knowledge. I don't know. Maybe it's the school. It's how you are trained to music. Maybe it's the art school or the music schools. I just don't know. But it's just all those examples. That's why we love English music. I mean British music.
But
And the British, I think the British music industry is exceptional. Like I think England is just like an exceptional place to make music and to listen to music. Like we in America don't realize that radio in Europe is actually good. Like there's some stuff that takes off in America that could never work in Europe, like satellite radio. Because satellite radio works out here because mainstream or like commercial, like actual radio stations are such garbage that there's still people that want to hear some sort of like real good radio. But if you go to England and hear actually good music on the radio, and you try to tell someone like, well, there's this other kind of radio that you got to have reception from the satellite and pay a subscription, but the music's really great. They'll be like, well, why don't you just turn on your fucking radio? They don't realize that out here it's like, the channels aren't the same. And in England, I don't know. I think England is a great ground for good music to work, like to reach people.
But you were referring to it earlier when you said France and England are only like 20 clicks away from each other, but still it's a big deal for Parisian artists to go over there. And I don't know how many groups from Marseille have played in London, and so there might be a similar kind of thing. Like obviously there is the whole language aspect, and that almost everyone in the Western world sort of speaks English.
There
and
is
yada yada.
the language. There is also kind of British music scene being that interesting and that it has such a quick attention. And I mean, it's also a little bit. How could I say this? Sorry, because as you say, English is not my first language, and I have to think about it. But it's also a bit protective, and a lot of French artists tried to make it in England or in America, of course, but in England especially. But the English music scene is so vibrant itself that it doesn't really need French artists that do the same thing that they already do. And the first reviews I was reading, like for my album, this one was like, this is kind of music that could only happen in France, basically. Like they were like, what's the point in England? Like we're way past that. Like merging hip hop and electro, we already did this, And in one way, you guys did. I mean, I don't know if you're English, but they did.
I feel like if you only knew.
So it's also very hard, to and from the artist's point of view, from the artist's point of view, and it's true for England, and it's even more true for America. You always have more strength when you don't know, when you're innocent about all this. You don't know how, like when you don't know how the English music industry or the English press and radio, for example, how hard they are, and how they just, you just don't want to know. Like if you're going to to struggle to have your music played in England or to release your record in America, you better not know what's really happening, because it's just, you would just like give up before. And when you don't know, when it's your first or second album, when you just go, and if you lucky enough, like I was, to have an opportunity to play there and to convince people, even if it's on a small scale and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, well, you're just lucky.
But rather than discussing the advantages, what's wrong today? The advantages and disadvantages of being in London, I was actually more interested in how to make it in either Montreal or Paris or God knows where, Timbuktu, Frankfurt, or any other city. And are there any lessons that you learned, or things that you would do differently now, having maybe committed one or two mistakes before?
Just in terms of like as an artist breaking through elsewhere in the world? The internet makes it so much easier today. Like it's really, like that's the big part of it. Like nowadays when you go do a show in a whole other country, most of the people that come to your show will have heard a few of your songs or your mixes or whatever, like some sort of musical reference to you, which just wasn't the case a few years ago. So it's easier today to break through in other markets, I think. There's also a side of it that's like to come back to like the reality of like the path of someone like Mehdi and myself that like started, like that was in hip hop for many years and then went to other genres. When you travel, you face different levels of like difficult audiences in terms of like what they expect you to do, you know. And I think it's in terms of hip hop specifically, we don't, if you're from North America and you haven't tried to do a show in Europe or in England, for example, you might not realize this, but the further away you go from the birthplace of hip hop, the more people are stubbornly attached to and like the pure hip hop aesthetic, you know, like, and that's something that I had to fight. Like Mehdi was talking about having to fight in terms of like the sound of his music. What I had to fight was like the people in my audience, you know, going to England and doing shows where the DJs playing before me always, like for a while, always did exactly the same set of mid-90s rap. And like I would, you know, it's something that was mind-boggling and still is to me, to talk to certain DJs in Europe, where I would think that like if you're far away from where a lot of these rappers, American rappers, come from, you can kind of like pick from different sounds of rap and just appreciate everything. But on the contrary, a lot of the guys that I talk to will still think that Jay-Z is commercial and whack, you know, and like, or just anything on Rockefeller is like not good, and all the, you know, all the majors are whack, and can we please have Leaders of the New School back and stuff like that? And you're just like, dude, like, it's 2007. Have you listened to Jay-Z records? Like, it's just so crazy to still have these conversations because Jay-Z's not, he's like starting to lose it. You know, like, so to go from like the progression of like, at first he was doing commercial records and not everyone listened and noticed at first that he was actually a really good rapper. Then he made undeniably dope records that everybody really should have realized that he was the, you know, the best rapper alive. And now he's starting to fall off a bit. And then you talk to these guys who are still at the like -1 stage of thinking like, Jay-Z, well, he has champagne. What the fuck? Like, you know, like KMD didn't have champagne.
Yeah, but
You're
I mean,
just, like,
dealing with Taliban is a hard thing, like, no matter what kind of headwear they have, like.
You said what? The Taliban? What?
Yeah, I mean, dealing with, like, hip-hop Taliban is the same
Yeah.
as when, like, going to Afghanistan, kind of.
What about the Dipset Taliban? But and I don't want to lump all of Europe into that, and like I'll do some shows in like regional North American markets and face the same thing also. But that's something that I have had to face. And it's just ill when you're an artist or a musician, and in an ideal world, you would like to only have to worry about the music that you make and making something that you're proud of. But then there's a whole other side of the battle that's like getting it to the right people and like having your shows have the vibe that you want it to have. You know, so and when you go through certain transitions, you always have to go through those phases where you just have to fight for it, and where people just stubbornly want the old you or whatever.
So essentially, you're at the same point as, let's say, Miles, who heaps of jazz critics argue killed jazz by doing fusion, which I guess for most of our generation is when records got interesting and like where gazillions of samples came from. And like, so when did turntablism become too much of an Olympic sport for you?
That's a good example. Well, for me, it really happened in stages. Like, and I really don't want to make it seem like I've turned my back on turntablism. Like, a lot of the shows on this tour, I'll still do, you know, a solo somewhere towards the end of the night just to get like to make it like the cherry on top of the sundae kind of thing. And even when I don't literally do a turntablism solo, I'll still cut and stuff like that. So it's not like I'm not interested in turntablism anymore, but it went from like getting out of the battle scene, which was really a long time ago for me. Like, people still ask me, like, you still battle? Last time I battled was in 2000. Like, that's a long time ago. So getting out of the battle scene, and then discovering DJing in a more general sense, like doing shows where I had to like just actually do a DJ set and not only be booked because I can scratch well or whatever. So like getting into DJing in the like selection and party rocking and crowd reading side of it. From there I started feeling like it was too much of a dichotomy where like either I was doing turntablism or I was mixing, but it was too separate. So from there, I kind of wanted to bring back turntablism a bit, but as a tool, like kind of as like a means and not an end, like as one of my tools when I'm DJing, and that's pretty close to the mentality where I'm at today. Except today, like at this point in time. I just feel like I don't even need to cut at every show that I do, because it's my foundation from 10 years ago, and I still love to do it. It's like a passion and something that's a part of who I am, and it's the reason why I got into DJing. But the turntablism scene itself, when I think grew out of it, really turned me off after a while, you know, as I was getting into more production and like learning into different styles of music and everything, not to come off judgmental or anything, but to go back to seeing a battle, watching a battle and seeing guys do the same stuff that, you know, we were doing a few years earlier. You see that first and you go like, yeah, I wish someone would come and change it up again. And then to go, like, that's the first stage of like getting turned off a bit. And then you do shows and there's guys that look like creeps, like dudes that are like the comic book guy in The Simpsons, who are in the front row of your show, that are like this in front of your decks, and that just go like, and you're just like, is that like the scene? Is that what the scene has become? You like. That'll bring up...
Just imagine what Eddie Van Halen must feel like.
I'm sure, yeah, shred. I don't know, like, if anything, like, you know, like, that'll bring up a certain amount of, like, disgust in me. And, like, I gotta watch myself when I feel turned off by that, because I still like to cut, and I don't want to, like, overlook it, you know, because I still think it's something that I can do that some of my DJ peers can't. But my mentality now is, like I was saying, like it's a means to an end. It's not the end itself. You know, like the years where I was heavy in turntablism, you know, like 97 to 2000, 2001, every year there were like new styles and new techniques being invented. So the technical side of it was so stimulating. Like technically it was mushrooming, it was like bubbling to such an extreme level that people were interested in going to see a show that only had turntablism for the whole night, just because it was dazzling. Like it really was. Like you saw a show 6 months ago and then you went to see another one and some dude like invented a whole other style and you're like, oh, this guy's dope. And like inevitably there's only so many things you can invent, and you know what I mean. And it's like, again, we were talking about limited, like we were talking about boundaries earlier. Like the way turntablism has been for a long time, you take this guy out of here, this has been the limited setup, and after a while you're just like, okay, with two Techniques SL 1200 Mark II turntables and Shure MK40, like M447s, and like a choice of maybe 3 mixers, you know, and at some point the DJs ran out of new stuff to do. And it's weird because a lot of my DJ friends kind of gave up on DJing. You know what I mean? So we were like, me and the allies, that's like the DJs that I was heavily rolling with and touring with in those years. We had this whole like network of friends when you went to this city, you hung out with that dude who was like the dope scratch DJ from that city. And then when you start going back to that city and like your boy's now like working at the bank, you don't want to knock him for getting a real job, but at the same time you're like, damn, like are you really uninspired, and like is everybody else gonna get uninspired? And that's just when the technical side of it wasn't enough to sustain the whole movement anymore, you know. So today it's a lot more about, to me it's a lot more about taking that as a foundation, but more than anything, being a good DJ and a good producer is like a much more of a bigger concern.
I don't know where Theo is, but you were just mentioning this guy. Now you were championing an art that was heralding the turntable as an instrument and yada yada yada, and all of a sudden there's this heresy of a computer coming in.
Computer. You want me to talk about bringing the computer into... One thing, well, that was weird. One thing that was...
That was for the heresy.
Yeah. One thing that I find strange with myself when I like look at my opinions objectively is like, I was always the youngest dude in my circles, but I think in certain ways I was always like the purist. IST, not EST. Like I was the one that was like really like, you can't do that kind of thing. So I remember when Craze first messed around with like a prototype of Final Scratch. Craze is like one of my DJ partners from Miami.
You were in the Beatles together, right?
Yeah, exactly. When he first told me about the prototype of Final Scratch that he tried out, I was just like, for so many reasons, I was just like, no, that's whack. Like, why would you do that? And no way that it's gonna sound the same. And are you really gonna bring a fucking laptop to the club? Are you stupid? Like, I was against it. I mean, I wasn't literally insulting him like that, but I was just like, all right, you do you, I do me, kind of thing. And we were boys, and he was a great DJ, and I knew that he would freak it in his way, but I wasn't interested in it. And the first instance where this whole technology that Serato does now really captured me was before Serato came out. A lot of people don't know this. Before Serato came out with their Scratch Live program, Serato is a plugin company from New Zealand, and they made a plugin for Pro Tools that was called Serato Scratch, and you could load an audio file and you had to connect it in this really complicated way with your Pro Tools rig, but it simply allowed you to scratch with a control record a file that you loaded up on your computer. But you couldn't apply to full songs because you needed way too much RAM, and it was just impossible. But that's the first thing that Serato developed, and that's something that caught me, because there were instances where I wanted to scratch on something that either I didn't have on vinyl, or that didn't exist on vinyl, or I didn't want to ruin my vinyl. And suddenly I had a new solution for that. And then they started developing the standalone program, and I was doing beta testing for them before it came out. And even when they finished the program, it really took me a while to like get used to DJing on it. Like there was a period of like, I want to say at least 6 months, where I would bring my laptop to a club and play half of the songs off of Serato and half of the songs off of actual vinyl. And it's weird to that might make me sound like an idiot, because you're just like, why can't you just switch? But this is when Serato was first coming out, and a lot of people didn't know about it. And it was hard for me to I got past the whole corniness of working with a laptop on stage, and that hurdle at that point was getting used to selecting songs off of a laptop. Like and this new generation of DJs now isn't going to face this difficulty because they never were trained in doing sets with one crate. But when you're used to DJing off of vinyl, and you know anybody that's been DJing for many years knows this, you're used to having 70 records to choose from for your set or something, or whatever number. And even in the simple, like, primal way that you actually sift through your records in your crate, and you look at the cover and you know what song it is. You don't even have to read the title. You're like, you can just go brrrr, and you know everything that you just passed. Whereas on the record, you're like, les rythmes digital. Okay, no, not that. You read it's just a different process of thinking about how I played my records, and I really had to get used to that. And eventually, I just went all the way on Serato. And shame on me, you're on CDJs. But actually, I want to say something about that. Like, seeing guys like Mehdi, and even like, I mean, when I see Mehdi, I can tell that he's from a hip hop background, and he's from a vinyl background. But there's guys that are just all the way electro techno DJs on CDJs. Like this past year, I saw some DJs, including Mehdi, on CDJs, freak the CDJs, like subvert the music they were playing way more than what people in America have been doing with vinyl and or Serato. And that gave me a new push of inspiration this year to like do more to my records when I mix them. Like just a second ago when I was talking about, for years I've been wanting to like take the mentality, the concept of turntablism, where your record is simply a tool, and you make it what music you want to make it. To apply that to a mix, that's something that was like a mission, like the holy grail for me for years. But for some reason, every DJ that I knew, but most DJs that I knew that played on vinyl and Serato, still ended up simply like mixing song after song. And it's really, as much, like, even though I don't personally use CDJs, it fascinated me when I first saw good DJs on CDJs really mess with like the ultra pitch and the looping and using more tools and stuff. Because I don't know, for some reason, there's something about Serato, as much as I love it and I'm endorsed by them and I use it every one of my shows and everything, I think it makes you lazy in your DJing. And that's like the big danger of going to Serato. It makes you lazy on so many levels. Like the first one being sorting my BPMs. Like that makes that makes DJing a whole other experience, to be able to sort your song by BPM. Part of it is cool because it'll make you try mixes that you might not have tried, because like, until you saw the 2 BPMs match on your list of songs, you might not have thought like, hey, this is mixable with that. But in reality, that's the romantic way of thinking about it. In reality, you make your playlist, you sort it by BPM, and you play it in similar BPMs, and that makes you lazy. So there definitely was a point for me this year where I felt that I was being lazy with the way I played on Serato, and wanted to get more creative with it. And a large part of that was seeing a few people on CDJs. Like, it's just ill to me that, like, I come from turntablism. Like, I come from the scene where people do the most with records in theory, right? Like, you take these records and there's this, like you were saying earlier, like the turntable is a musical instrument. Now, how come when I see Boys Noise, who's a technical DJ who from Germany, your fair land, like from a whole, meaning like a whole other world of DJing, how come when I see him DJ, it inspires me more than like someone, you know, than a fellow turntablist? Because I saw him play on 3 CDJs, doing all these, where every single mix, he, you know, like he knew where the breakdown was and what's the strategic part to bring in the next song from the previous song. And again, like I was saying, like using tools, and seeing that, I was like, man, like that dude is freaking his record, is doing a lot with his records, you know. So that stuff like that would make me go back to my Serato setup and be like, how can I take that approach of DJing, like, you know, that way of mixing, and apply it to the setup that's mine, which is Serato and an effects box or whatever else, and maybe add a little bit of scratching in it, and like a little bit of bringing back records in the way that I know how to do it, and that's how I came up. That's how I'm currently coming up with like the style of DJing that I really want to make my own, which is what I'm really working on now.
Can you probably, since you received so much kudos about your style of playing, could you probably so much praise for the style of for your style of playing from him?
Thank you.
Could you probably elaborate a little bit about what it is that you do and your motivations behind it?
Well, first I have to say I had the same shock when I heard that the standout, because you have to understand, in America, Serato is pretty much everywhere, where it's not the case at all in Europe. And the standout in Europe right now is CDJs, it's Pioneer CDJs, and it's just the standout that is just like everywhere. And it's actually kind of a problem when a DJ shows up with Serato and you have to deplug. Sometimes the mixers are screwed in the tables and the engineers are like, oh, it's just different. So I was obviously using vinyls and bringing some records. And the first time I came on tour in America, the first time I played here, for example, in Toronto with this guy over there, Mario, I had some records. I was playing vinyls, and I had like one very, very heavy bag of hip-hop records and one heavy, heavy, heavy bag of techno and electro records. And it was just, you know, I couldn't take it anymore. I mean, like, if you have to do like 6 or 7 shows in like 5 days, your records, you're wary of losing them. You're wary of like, you know, breaking them. You just can't take it anymore. And my other friends, I had the same shock. For example, my friend DJ Feeds, who's Afi from Headbangers DJ and producer, he was probably the best DJ I knew. And he was doing some stuff with the CDs that couldn't be done with the vinyl. And that's where Pioneer, I think, like had the best tool, because the other CD turntables were emulating what you could do with a vinyl, but CDJs were just taking it somewhere else. Like, for example, the table is not even turning. And at first I was like, you know, where are you putting your hands? What are you doing? The table's not even turning. And it was like, fuck the fact that it's not turning. Like, try it, you'll see. And after this tour, yeah, I had to go to Australia, which is even worse. And I had to switch. And I made the decision to leave my records at home, to take my iPod and my computer, and to burn CDs in the plane while going to Australia. I had like 6 or 7 shows in Australia, and I had no records. I had a CD case, a big block of blank CDs, and I had to burn CDs in the plane if I wanted to do the shows that I had to do. So I had to go to CDJs and to, do something different with it, because just playing with turntables wasn't where it was anymore. So from there, like being influenced by Feeds and by Boys Noise and by all those guys and by a lot of techno DJs, because it's not that many hip hop DJs that I've seen using CDJs. I've tried to, still doing the same hip hop routine, plus add some electro stuff to it. And the more and more I was being able with my technique to bridge, and to put some hip hop or some like 70s or 80s electro or funk into some electro, and reacting like more easily to what the audience was trying to hear also. That went in parallel with the fact that Ed Banger was becoming more and more popular, and that the audience sometimes don't really understand that there's not one Ed Banger sound, but that I'm more hip hop and Justice are more electro, for example, and I'm not playing always electro records, and I had to have more tools in my bag if I wanted to switch from one style to the other. So, I found myself very happy with the CDJs and still not really understanding what is happening here. But I appreciate the fact that like some like high-end technician like A-Trak was able to change his tools in the middle of his of your way like that. Like if you were a guitar player once again, and at one point somebody said, no, guitar is over, man. There's no guitar anymore. You have to learn how to play the violin.
The lute.
Or whatever, you'd be like, whatever, my tool is the guitar, I'll play the guitar. So, once again, there's not one path, there's not one way of thinking, it's just do what you have to do.
Now, with coming from...
That's really dope.
Off the mute button. Now, with hailing from Paris, obviously, there's always been a bit of a connection, at least in the more recent parts of your career, with that other dirty word, fashion. So, when did fashion become more important than music?
You know what? I love this subject, especially that, I'm from the hip hop side of it, and I'm at Ed Banger, which is probably the most fashionable label out of Paris right now. I just love the subject, and because like overseas, and when I go to Japan, for example, people receive our music through channels like Colette, which is a very fashion high-end store in Paris, and those kind of websites that like play some cool music and they sync it to fashion shows and stuff like that, and which is not the case at all in Paris, but not at all. Like people don't understand how we are disconnected from the fashion world. Like and me myself, I have way more connections with the people that are doing the riots in the streets and in the suburbs in Paris, which are the less fashionable people in the world, than to Karl Lagerfeld or to Yves Saint Laurent or to Colette's store. I mean, it's just I encounter this misunderstanding all the time, and people think that we are a fashionable label and that we are in fashion, and that there are connections in between our worlds, which there is not. I mean, some of us like fashion and some of us don't, and that's pretty much it. That's all. It's not like being from Paris, you have to drink wine, eat cheese, and like fashion. I personally don't like fashion. I mean, and I understand that like people obviously think that we are all linked because it's Paris and because we live pretty much the same way of life or whatever. It's just not the case. It's a big misunderstanding, and I experience it as an everyday. That's not a problem, you know. It could be.
I mean,
worse.
obviously, you live quite well of that misunderstanding.
Exactly. But being at Ed Banger and us, Ed Banger artists, and even Pedro to some extent, you know, have to cope with this misunderstanding that we are fashion, and sometimes they don't even understand how Pedro, which is such a fashionable guy, like would play you know, Jay-Z record or something more ghetto, like a Noriega record in a set, and they would be like, you know, it's weird, like it just doesn't match or whatever, or not that, but they would think, oh, he plays it, oh, that's maybe because whatever, you know, they try to. It's just not the case, you know. It's just different, and that's something interesting about Paris, which rings a bell about the stuff you were saying about London, Paris, Montreal, etc., etc. And I personally think that being from Paris, I have to make, that's how I see it, the most Parisian sound and the music that is the closest to what I live in my city, to spark some interest to you guys that have another relation to your own city and another reality. And in the same way, for example, Martin Scorsese, for example, or Spike Lee are doing New York movies and go to the world and say, this is how New York is. That's how I feel about my music. And I want to say, this is how Paris is. And that's how I feel comfortable coming to Toronto, coming to New York, or going to London and say, this is, you know, what Paris is. For example, last night we played in Chicago, and I've made a slight mistake. I was like, hey, we're in Chicago. I'm going to play some Chicago records. And I was like playing some DJ funk and playing some, you know, and whatever. And I was playing a lot of Chicago records, and, you know, the kids were like, yeah, whatever. We want to hear some Justice. We want to hear some Paris music. We want to hear Sebastian. We want to hear Daft Punk. We ended up playing like 15 Daft Punk songs and 10 Justice songs. We were in the birthplace of house music. So, you know, I was like, okay, you know, being in Chicago and trying to play Chicago music, that's just not, you know, if you're from Paris, just do Paris, man.
Yeah, and our audiences are younger. Like that's, you know, we were talking about earlier about like what point, you were asking me what point I had to, like I came to a certain distance with turntablism. There's also a certain distance I had to take from like the 90s aesthetic of rap that I came up in. And that has to do with the reality that nowadays, if you do music, your audience is mad young. Like there was a point, you know, maybe 4 years ago or something, where I looked at my crate. I was still playing vinyl. I looked at my crate, and I saw like, you know, a bunch of, you know, Tribe records and stuff like that, and thinking like, realizing to the people that come to my shows now, this is old school, and it was still the core of my set, you know, and to have that realization of like, wow, the core of my set is old school. I want to be an old school DJ. You know what I mean? And yeah, that's a crazy realization. And you know, yesterday Mehdi played some Chicago house records and told me he was surprised that the crowd wasn't really reacting. But yeah, it's the audience was young. They don't even know that that's the heritage of their city. And it's tripped out because we invited DJ Gantman, who's like a really like kind of legendary Chicago house and ghetto tech producer, to come and hang out. And, you know, he did some beats for Kid Sister, and he's gonna do some stuff for Fool's Gold also. So I told him, you know, come through, do a little surprise set at the end. And he's watching me and Mehdi play in Chicago, and he's like, man, this reminds me of going to France, like in the late '90s. You know, like when we're playing, you know, basically house music, like whatever, it's a certain electro this, techno that, whatever, but it's music that you would think that when you play in Chicago, it's in the Chicago concept. Like Chicago has such a heritage in that, and to hear one of the most important figures in Chicago in that style of music talk about Paris so many times in the conversation that evening, it just shows you that everybody has their references. And you know, like even for someone like me from North America that plays a lot of records in my electro sets that are from Europe, for me it's a mindfuck to go to Europe and meet some of the artists whose records I play a lot, and to realize that to guys in Europe, they still have their eyes set on America a lot. And you know, like you can have all these conceptions of like, I don't know, like when you go to someone's town, do they realize that they're the shit? You know what I mean? So like, this past year,
Classic case of grass is greener of the underside. And stuff.
So like in the last year or two, Paris has been like hugely important in the music scene. But I talked to a lot of Parisians that still have this fascination for like, but the Americans but the Americans. So it's weird to hear that in the conversation. And
But
be
I
like,
mean-
but the Americans are looking at you right now. You know?
But let's do a reality check, like when Daft Punk and Cassius and Motorbus and all those guys blew up, there wasn't hardly a club in Paris playing this kind of music, maybe apart from the Rex on Wednesdays or so.
Exactly.
So what's the story now then? Do you get like a...
Now, well, it's like I was telling you, like we were crossing those genres like 5 or 6 years ago. Nobody cared, and now Justice has the #1 record in the country. But France is,
But then a #1 record doesn't necessarily mean that you have like a vibrant club scene. And I mean, you see like 45-year-old, very cultured people talking on French TV about the Justice record. And I mean, that's not going to talk really to 16-year-old kids in a banlieue, right?
I wouldn't know. It's pretty hard to explain because it's true that even when Daft Punk were selling millions of records, and I'm pretty sure they sold like 600,000 records in France, which is like selling 3 million in America. I'm pretty sure that even at that point, where they were definitely the most powerful French band in the country, we still had to fight for some good music or that kind of music in regular clubs. I just couldn't understand. I just couldn't explain. I think it's just more easy. It's just easier for commercial clubs to play whatever's playing on the radio, and I just don't know. And it's even funnier to think that when we started, like France just didn't care about us, and London actually took notice first before, and even America before France, which was and we're still pretty, like, except for Justice, the rest of us, are pretty, not, I wouldn't say underground, but we're pretty like left field, like you said, in France, and I think we will remain that way. I just don't know, maybe it's just not for France, this music, which is even better because, I'm here now.
Well, you at least get to travel a bit, yes. But I might be oversimplifying here, but I think one of the weird notions that people have to realize when they get to Paris, for example, that there's definitely dramatic differences in various parts of the city. Like if you go to all the inner bits where all the tourists go and the Louvre is and all the beautiful restaurants and all those flats that I guess maybe 5% of us here in this room will ever be able to afford. Like Paris inner city life is not exactly cheap, and it's not exactly made for young creative people.
No, but it's a big city. It's pretty much the biggest city in European Union. It has, not Paris as itself, but the whole area is like 11 or 12 million people. And as in everything, like as in New York, or as in Chicago, or as in London, for example, it has its scenes. It's pretty big. Like some bands are very, very, very popular, and they make a lot of money, and you have never heard of them. And there are like very rich and very poor parts of the city. It's as every big city, but that's what I like about it. That's what I love, and that's definitely something that we are trying to do, as to like diversify our music, which is not always very readable, if I can say this, like from an overseas point of view. But we definitely represent Paris in its diversity at Banger, and we love this. We are very different one from the other, but the music just connects.
On the one hand, I don't know where the office is these days, but I know that the old office was very much in the center of the city. But when you look at the way you portray yourself, let's say with the videos, you're championing a lot of the working class culture of the country, like with the cars and parking lot kind of stuff, or the handshakes and yada yada yada. And what is the significance, or which role does the banlieue and everything that's going on play outside of the riots in French popular culture?
Well, it's very important because first, you know, style, music, and stuff. A lot of it comes from there because it's the youth, and as in every Western country, the youth plays a very important role in the culture. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm from outside of Paris. You know, I'm from what you call the banlieue, which is the suburban area of Paris, which is the poorest. And it's just who I am, you know. And I was never in some bad. I was never a thug, or I was never a drug dealer or whatever. But it's just how I grew up, like going to school and my family. And it's just I wouldn't like my music to be only one message. I wouldn't like my music to be only dance, for example, or to be only love, or to be, what did you call, elevator music or whatever. I love
Hotel music.
hotel music. I'm sorry. I love the fact that music, and it's even more difficult when you're doing instrumental music, but hence the videos. When you can have one track that says, hey, you know, that's who I am, I'm from this part of the city and this is what I'm experiencing, but I also like to dance, and I also like to have sex with girls, and I also like to have whatever. Cashews, and I also like to do all those things at the same time. But as far as I'm concerned, that's how I use image. That's how I use my videos, and that's just who I am. And I'm glad that it shows, and that people from like not from Paris could understand this, you know, which makes, once again, the fashion issue even funnier. I love this. I love this.
It's
fashion
slightly
issue.
ironic, yeah. No, but I mean, yeah. I think it's a lot harder to be loved for the wrong reasons than for the right ones, is it? I mean, how can you turn that away?
That's the subject of another lecture.
Yeah, but coming back to the more serious things, because I mean, yeah, fashion people will be fashion people, and I don't know, they will be here today and somewhere else in 2 minutes. But yeah, your friends that you grew up with will not be able to move that quickly. And obviously, like a year ago, when Sarkozy was not the president, but was whatever he was at the time, like the internal, heading the internal department. I think that raised a lot of questions throughout the world, or at least in Europe, of like the role both of the youth in modern society, and especially immigrant youth. And I mean, can you give us like a first-hand account? Because I mean, for most people, I think up until that point, the notion of youth was more a marketing concept, or something that happened 800 years ago in 1968 or so. But yeah, but the actual thing that you can really challenge the state's authority was a pretty powerful moment.
Yeah, and it's still not finished actually in France. There's still a lot of problems of what you guys called riots, which is not even what was actually happening or whatever. But
What was happening?
well, I don't know. It was a very serious time where a lot of problems were raised and were dealt with kind of absurdity and sometimes even stupidity. You know, some a lot of people took that example for some young people were burning their own school, and their leaders were telling them, like, don't do this because this school that you are burning is your way out of this. But they just didn't care, or they just, you know, didn't want to understand the situation. So it's a very, very tough subject, and it's not something that I can explain, especially in English, that I can explain easily. So it was an interesting, if I can say it like this, time, and it's still not finished. And the problems that it raised will not be dealt with like until 10, 15, 20 years, because you know it's very, very serious, and the generation that that suffers those problems right now will not find any solution in any like 2 or 3 years. It's not gonna like just solve like that because Sarkozy is now our president or whatever. If the girl would have become our president, it's just something more serious. So I would have a very, very hard time explaining myself about this, and it's a tough subject. And once again, English is not my first language, so it's very subtle, and sometimes it touches like an absurd point where it's something that you just cannot understand, like, and you just cannot make those rioters understand, and they didn't want to understand anymore. Some people were like, yeah, I understand why they don't want to understand, and some people were just like, this is just stupid. So it's a very tough subject, and it's still not finished. The problems we are dealing with are still pretty much here, and now that Sarkozy became our president, it raised another kind of strain, and a lot of neighborhoods are still fighting with the police at the moment, still like 1 or 2 years after. So it is a situation, definitely. Sorry if I cannot be more.
No, it's just okay. No, yeah. we don't want to press you on it. So. Okay. Now, you are obviously, with Montreal, facing slightly different issues. You nevertheless left it as well and went to New York then. So why did you feel you had to leave Canada then?
It's on a few levels, like, and it's still hard for me. Like, I still don't quite call New York home. I feel like this is kind of something I need to do right now in my life to be there. But there's a side of it, of me leaving Montreal, that had to do with needing to be more stimulated, and the side of it that was simply the convenience of being close to certain people, and the convenience in terms of, I travel so much that, like, the actual fact that it's easier to travel in and out of New York compared to Montreal actually was a big factor. But I love Montreal, and it's I find it one of the most culturally rich cities in the world. And the more I traveled in the course of my career, the more I realized how unique Montreal is. So it can seem a little strange for me to say that I left Montreal to in search of being even more stimulated artistically, but the reality is, and then I don't know how many people here actually are from Toronto. It's interesting to talk about this in Canada, but I feel like in Montreal and in Canada in general, there's a certain comfort there that when you're in an industry that's very competitive, you can reach a point where it feels like that comfort gives you a plateau. You know what I mean? Like, everything that I love about Canada, socially and politically, in terms of how protected we are, I feel like when it comes to situations where people are kind of at the top of their field, the reverse of that comfort and that protection that we have, that everybody has in Canada, means that it's hard to really keep going up and up and up. You know what I mean? Like, it's strange. Like, in America, most of the people can, like, the risk of getting really low in your life in terms of, like, career is really serious. Like, in America, if you don't have a good situation in your life, you can reach extreme lows. But you can also, if you're like a specialist in your field, and you can talk about a heart surgeon, or you could talk about a scratch DJ, you can reach real highs too. And so I don't know if it's because life is, like, more or less challenging in Montreal and New York, but I think I started feeling like I would come back to Montreal between my travels, and kind of come back to seeing my friends doing the same stuff all the time, and go to New York for like a weekend, and get more done musically and career-wise than I could do in 2 months in Montreal. And after a while, I was just like, man, I need to like live in the city for a bit and like make some moves, you know, like the fact of like the amount of good art and music that you can be that you have access to in New York is really a great asset when you're in the process of developing yourself as an artist. Like I've been doing this for 12 years, but I feel like a new artist right now because like I have a new label, and I'm for the first time actually I finally have a certain output in my production. So I'm approaching it like a new artist. And when I would go to New York, I would get stimulated so much that I just wanted to spend time there. And like I said, there's many people that I work with that are based there, and so it's really in that context. And I don't know how long I'll be there for, and I don't know if I'll go somewhere else after. It's kind of a strange thing because for years and years up until when I actually moved to New York, I always thought that I would be in Montreal my whole life. But right now I'm not. I still love it. And I don't know what's next.
Did you find that your sense of home has changed dramatically through touring?
Yeah, that's another. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I feel like for certain people to move to another country, there's a challenge there in making a new place your home. I'm used to living out of hotels. Like I'm used to being in different cities every day for a significant portion of my time. So yeah, I do think that the lifestyle that I live as a DJ and have lived for many, many, many years now affects my conception of what home is, and maybe makes it easier for me to be like a bit of a nomad. Even though I never really thought that was in my personality. Like I'm kind of a homebody, and I'm kind of like a simple person in my like my comforts and habits and like few close friends and stuff. So I didn't think that I could just be some roaming dude or whatever, but the move to New York wasn't that hard.
How about you?
Me, I still live in Paris, and I pretty much don't want to move. I think, I'm from Paris, but I travel all the time, so I get to like my city even more when I'm there. And the fact is, I also have a family. I'm married, I have a child, and I'm also very close to my parents and my uncles and cousins and stuff. And
but the scene that you're part of musically is in Paris with you. That's what's different with me. I didn't have people in Montreal that I work with that much.
Well, internet, BlackBerry, phone. I don't know if you have the internet in Canada.
We just.
Oh, you do. No, you
coming from the country of the Minitel.
Yeah, but you pretty much connect with everybody like.
But I'm saying
like those guys from Australia, for example, like. There's a big, vibrant, for example, Australian scene right now, and they're the most isolated country in the world. But we pretty much, know if you want to send a text message, do you have SMS? If you want to send, at 4 o'clock in the morning, you just reach them. I don't know how much the scene is important for me as far as my love for Paris is concerned. And, me personally, I really want to stay close to my family. That's why. But I do like Paris, and I do like living in Paris, and I do like living in France.
Food is good.
We got some questions here, somewhere, anywhere. Okay, we tired them out, hooray. So, without wanting to turn you into a circus horse, but is there any particular reason you set this up? Or?
I really don't know. I find it kind of funny that it's there. I think, we have to leave pretty soon, but I didn't know what we didn't plan anything, and I just thought that we might have certain examples to play, and in fact, I think our rambling was self-sufficient today and didn't need examples.
Okay, but so more elaborate examples will be shown tonight then, I guess?
Yes, of course.
Do you know any stage times?
What doors? Yeah.
Well, that's always good. So
I mean, what time is doors? 10? I mean, roughly, Nick Cash Dubs will be opening up till about 11:30 or 12. Kid Sister's gonna perform. We might have some surprise guests. I don't know. We're still calling friends and possibly planning surprises and stuff. Mehdi and I will DJ from about 12:30 to 1:30 or so. Kavinsky's gonna play some hard techno after. No, he's not. Kavinsky will play after, and then we'll probably all get back together at the end of the night. So,
yeah, so that's fairly.
yeah.
Okay, and when will Manny Fresh be on stage then?
We're not gonna have many fresh tonight.
Well, thank you, thank the boys, thank you, Mehdi, thank you, A-Trak.
Thanks.